Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to Not My Shop. We're at the Colonial Williamsburg Carpenter shop and today we're going to be finding out what happens here. So let's dive in.
Yeah, I'm Matt Sandbury. I'm the master carpenter at Colonial Williamsburg. And our main task here, of course, is to put back buildings that the archaeologists find the foundations of. And we're going to do as faithful of a reconstruction as we have evidence for at the time. But always putting back one or two buildings a year and making the city as holistic as it can be.
How many people work on the carpenters?
There's 6 of us on our crew, and that's about right. It's a little light for the historic carpentry crews, but for what we're dealing with one project at a time, that's a pretty manageable amount of people. 250 years ago, a carpentry crew would have multiple projects at a continuous time, so you wouldn't necessarily see all of those people on one project at a time. They'd be spread out. So maybe somebody's doing the foundation of a building, another one is dealing with the framework, and another is finishing out a third building. So, you're probably not going to see all of the people working on the same project continuously, like we do. We start one project, we're going to see that project through to the end, and then start the next one.
Do you do like Amish barn raisings where the whole community gets together and lifts up walls?
We sometimes do. It is not historically accurate, right? It would be like today having people just in your town be like, hey, we're building this house over here. Come here. We're gonna help you raise a wall. I mean, the community, I think, in most historic instances, is not that well tied. You're going to be doing it yourself as the carpentry crew, and you might have hired help. We call them jobbers. So 250 years ago, that was a pretty common thing to see, where people would be hired on for a day or two as physical labor. But here in 2026, if we got a big job and we need 30 people to show up and help us, we get them all out here.
Historical archaeology. How do you actually find out how things were done? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question. So archaeology is going to not only be able to tell us a lot about what the foundation of a building is, the remnants of what's underground, but they can tell us about what happened around the building and a lot of the refuse as well. The garbage that was thrown out 250 years ago ends up relatively close to the building. So they're able to figure out a lot of things of what's going on in the building, as well as even as close as to what room activities were being done in. So you can sort of dissect the building based on a lot of that too. And that's, of course, the non-paper evidence. Of course, our historians have quite a bit to working with as well, incorporating other examples of known buildings that do the same task and how those buildings performed. So there's a lot of evidence that goes into what these buildings look like and how they're put together.
and one of the common questions my audience is going to ask is, so you've got a pit saw.
Yeah.
How do you choose who goes on the top and who goes on the bottom?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. The top dog or underdog, which is really a later term. But yes, who's choosing top and bottom in the pit saw? Our apprenticeship, you're going to serve both sides of that saw. But your body is going to tell you which position you're better at. I, for example, I got in the pit and, I was lousy. 3 days of being down there, we weren't doing as well as a team. The second that I came up top, things sort of clicked, right? It's a difference in how your body is pulling and pushing that saw. I would almost say it's a lot like a normal woodworker today having a more comfortable stroke with a Japanese saw versus a Western saw, right? The pull versus the push. Are you doing the action on the pull? That's the down, right? You're pulling that saw down and doing the cut. Or would you rather be lifting that 15, 20-pound saw up and then guide it on the way down? Right, so the workload is about even. right? So when people say, oh, the guy in the pit has all the work, it's about even. And when you do look at the older artwork that shows pit sawing, you'll often see them with bigger hats, but it's not because of the sawdust. We get that question a lot too. The sawdust should be coming out well in front of the pitman. The hat is because you're generally looking up, right? So if you don't have a nice roof over your head like a lot of the pit saws that you see in the artwork, you're looking at the sun, right? And you've got to follow a line, a chalk line on the bottom of that thing. So being able to block out a lot of that other view gives you a cleaner view of what you're actually supposed to be paying attention to. But yeah, there's a lot of myths that surround pit sawing. There always are.
For people wanting to come and visit, what would you want to know? What would you want them to look for?
That's a great question. What do the people want to see? Well, of course you want to come see all the woodworking. Seeing the hay shop, seeing the joiners, seeing the carpenters, the wheelwrights, coopers, gunsmiths. We've got a lot of woodworking trades here. If you're into the metal stuff, we got a lot of that too, between the blacksmiths and tin shop, the silversmiths. There's a lot of people, including engravers. They're all really neat, and they all practice their trade. So I think it just is dependent on what people want to see, right? We're all here.
And of course, Eoin and I had to give this a go. We couldn't come all this way and not leave the pit saw alone. So they actually set it up for us and got everything going, because the first few passes are actually the most difficult, getting it online and getting the saw tracked. Once that's in place, it's relatively easy in kind of an odd form. So I'm going to be the first to head down into the pit. Eoin thought that I should show him how to do it. But yeah, this is one of those skills that is very, it is not as easy as it looks. When it's singing and running, it feels amazing, but every now and then the saw just catches and stops. And here I'm actually trying both sides to see which one do I like. We both found out that I actually am a little bit better on top. I don't know if the pulling wasn't quite what I wanted, but I was actually pushing the saw down nicely. Eoin worked a little bit better on the bottom, and so later on when he got into it, the two of us traded off sides. It's actually a really interesting device, and this whole setup that they have is really the Cadillac of pit saws. It has all the bells and whistles. A lot of them are just put a log up on trestles and manhandle it around, whereas this one is a clean, dry pit and has ways of actually maneuvering the log around that's not just, get a bunch of guys and lift it up and put it in place. Here you can see the technique that Eoin is trying to learn is that you actually have a little bit of an elliptical movement coming in, putting the saw into the cut and then letting it come down and then steering it. And so we're both looking at a line on the top to guide it along, and there's a little bit of steering that has to come from both sides. So then Eoin gave it a try up on the top, and the top seems like the great place to be, but remember, you're going to be lifting up a 15 to 20 pound saw over your head time after time after time all day long, and you're actually pulling this bar up not to your chest but over your head, and your face is going to be right in the middle of that nook once it gets all the way up. And so you're trying to get a rhythm between the two and both having a good stroke, and it's actually very difficult to maintain that rhythm and keep it going. It was one of these that you look at it and you think, oh yeah, I can do that. I'm decent at sawing other things, and this is actually very different because you are moving a large, heavy saw, and it is working into the wood, and it wants to catch in. You have these very large teeth that if they hit at the wrong moment, they just stop, and it locks the whole saw in like that. It's actually kind of an enjoyable process when it's working, and when it's not, it's a bit fiddly. Here you can see the method that these rollers will actually allow them to roll the log and advance it, and every now and then they have to maneuver it to put the saw in a different place. This is what actually locks onto the bottom, and so it's just a wedge that holds it into the bottom of the saw so the pitmen can run it up and down. Once it's in place, then you actually have to level it because you want to make sure that those cuts are perfectly vertical. So they'll lay a plumb bob on the line and make sure that they are indeed perfectly vertical, because you don't want to be cutting at an odd angle underneath. It just makes it a lot easier for both to be running. Here's where I'm figuring out where does this actually go onto the saw, and you have to put it down through the slot and then put the handle on the bottom. You want it to be about waist height because you don't want to be leaning all the way over and going all the way into the bottom. You want to be going from above your head to down about your waist in the full stroke. And then you're trying not to jam it in. And in this case, I'm on the top and then the other person is on the bottom, and the two of us have to work together, and you have to get into rhythm with your partner. It is a lot harder than it looks, but it is a lot of fun once it gets going. You'll also see that there's these wedges in here. Because this is a very big, heavy plate, you want to make sure that you have enough kerf movement so that it can continue down the saw. And so putting the wedges in to space things out makes everything a little bit easier to run. And so they'll be regularly moving these wedges along and then sliding them out just to put a little bit of pressure on the board so it doesn't pinch on. And yeah, we both had a lot of fun with this, and I would actually like to do a whole project where we cut this down and spend a couple days on it. I think that would be a lot of fun. Very tiring, but a lot of fun. And it's one of these things that would be exhausting until you get used to it. And once you've done it a few times and you've gotten used to doing it day after day, the human body can put up with quite a bit. But this is, a very twisted kind of fun. But I really enjoyed it. So I'll leave you here with the sights and sounds of sawing. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
There you go. There you go.
This job is just the pits.